On Christmas morning, my family went to Paris and left me a note on the fridge saying, "Happy Holidays." My passport was gone. They took my luggage and booked the Airbnb without me. They said, "You're too negative for family vacations." I was trapped alone with no money until I saw who else they forgot. I woke up to silence. Not the kind that feels peaceful, but the kind that makes your stomach twist because something is wrong. My phone said 8:42 a.m., and the house was empty. I thought maybe everyone had just gone out for breakfast. My mom, stepdad, my half-sister Kaylee, and my little brother Jordan. But the car wasn't in the driveway. The suitcases that had lined the hallway last night were gone. Then I saw it, a note on the fridge. Just a single sheet of paper, written in my mom's tidy handwriting. "Happy holidays. We thought it'd be best if you sat this trip out. You've been too negative lately, and we didn't want to ruin the mood. We'll talk when we get back." Mom. I read it 3 times before it actually hit me. They'd gone to Paris, without me. I ran upstairs to my room, heart pounding, thinking maybe there was a mistake, but my passport wasn't in my drawer. My luggage was gone too. The only clothes I had left were dirty jeans, a hoodie, and the t-shirt I'd slept in. I checked my phone again, no texts, no missed calls, nothing. Just a few photos on Instagram already showing my mom and Kaylee at the airport. They'd left me behind. It wasn't even about the trip. It was about what that note said. Too negative. My mom had said that before, usually when I called her out for favoring Kaylee or when I refused to play happy family for her husband, Mark. I guess this time she decided to fix it by cutting me out completely. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, feeling the kind of anger that makes your hands shake. They had literally stolen my passport, my property, and gone to another country. I didn't even have cash. My wallet was empty except for a few crumpled bills. It was Christmas Day. Every store near our place in Charlotte was closed. The silence of the house felt unreal. I was half expecting someone to jump out and yell, "Surprise." But no, they really did it. I spent the next 2 hours pacing, messaging my mom, Kaylee, even Jordan. No response. The longer it went, the more I started to feel something darker than anger, humiliation. Like I was a problem they'd quietly erased from the picture. Then, around noon, I heard something in the garage. A thud, then another. I froze. I walked down slowly, half afraid it was a burglar, half hoping it was some stupid misunderstanding and they'd come back for something. When I opened the door, I saw movement behind the car, someone crouched near the back seat, crying softly. It wasn't a stranger. It was my little brother, Jordan. And in that second, I realized something even more unbelievable than being left behind. They'd forgotten him too. And what he told me next changed everything. Jordan was only 11. His eyes were red and his voice came out in little hiccups when he said, "They left me." I pulled him into the kitchen, trying to make sense of it. His backpack was half-zipped, like he'd been rushing. Inside were a few video games, his toothbrush, and a folded hoodie, that's all. "They said we were leaving at 6, he sniffled. "I woke up late and they were gone. I called Mom, but she didn't pick up." That's when I noticed something. His phone was gone too. The same as mine last summer, when Mom borrowed it and never gave it back because she said I didn't need distractions. The truth hit me like a slow-moving train. This wasn't an accident. They hadn't forgotten him. They'd left him too. To understand how that could even happen, you'd have to know what our house was like after Mark moved in. My mom had married him 3 years ago, a real estate guy from Raleigh who smiled like a politician and talked like everyone else was stupid. When it was just Mom, me, and Jordan, we were fine. Tight, even. Things weren't perfect, but there was laughter. Then Mark came along and suddenly everything turned into appearances, photos for Facebook, matching outfits, fake smiles. He had a daughter, Kaylee, from his previous marriage. Perfect grades, cheer squad, private school. Mom adored her. Overnight, our house became Kaylee's home. Her trophies went on the mantle. Her favorite foods filled the pantry. Her bedroom was remodeled first. Jordan and I got used to being background noise. Then the small things started. I'd say something real like calling out when Kaylee lied or when Mark talked down to me, and Mom would say, "You're always so negative, can't you just be happy for once?" Jordan would forget to take out the trash, and Mark would punish him like he'd committed a crime, grounding him for weeks. Kaylee could do anything, and Mom would smile and call her our little blessing. By Thanksgiving last year, I'd stopped talking much. Every word turned into an argument. That's when Mom said it for the first time. You know, you really kill the mood sometimes. After that, she stopped including me in things. They went to Disney without me that spring. She said she didn't want drama. I should have seen this coming. Now, sitting across from Jordan on that freezing Christmas morning, it all felt too calculated to be coincidence. They took my phone, he whispered. Before I went to bed, Mom said she'd keep it safe for the trip. And your passport? I asked. He nodded. She said she'd pack it. So yeah, they didn't forget us. They planned this, down to the last detail. Jordan started crying again, saying, "Why doesn't Mom like us anymore?" I didn't have an answer. All I could do was put my arm around him and promise we'd be okay, even though we had no money, no passports, and no family. But I meant it. Because in that moment, something inside me hardened. They thought they could just erase us from their perfect vacation. They had no idea who they were dealing with, and I was going to make sure they regretted every second of it. That day dragged like time had stopped. Outside, everything was closed for Christmas. The only sound was the buzz of the old fridge and the occasional car passing outside. Jordan and I sat at the kitchen table with nothing but cereal and tap water. At first, I thought about calling the cops, saying my family had taken my passport. But what would that even do? They hadn't technically kidnapped me, they just left. And as far as the world was concerned, I was a moody 21-year-old who didn't get along with her mom. But Jordan, he was a minor, 11 years old, left home alone with no food, no money, no supervision. That part was different, and that's when I realized I had leverage. I didn't plan to use it right away, not yet. First, I wanted to see how far they'd go. By 2 p.m., I finally got a message from Mom. A text. "Mom, don't freak out. We just thought it would be better this way. Please don't make this a big deal." No mention of Jordan, no apology, no explanation. I stared at that message so long it burned into my brain. I typed and deleted at least 10 replies before settling on one line. "Me, you left Jordan." It took her an hour to respond. "Mom, that's impossible." He was in the car. I looked at Jordan. He was curled up on the couch, half asleep, wearing the hoodie he'd packed. He hadn't been in the car. "Me, he's here. You didn't even notice." No response after that, just silence. Then, around 5 p.m., my phone rang. Mom's number. Her voice came through thin and panicked. "What do you mean he's there? I saw him get in the car." "Then who the hell did you take?" I snapped. She went quiet. I heard her whispering to someone, Mark, probably. Then she said, "Put him on the phone." I handed the phone to Jordan. He said, "Hi, Mom," in the smallest voice. And then she hung up, that was it. "No, I love you." "No, I'm coming back." Just the click of the line going dead. That night, Jordan and I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner and slept on the couch because it was warmer near the space heater. I kept checking my phone, expecting her to message again. She didn't. By the next morning, though, something strange happened. A car pulled up outside the house. Not Mark's SUV, something smaller. A dark sedan. It idled there for a few minutes, engine running, no one getting out. Jordan noticed it first. "Why is that car just sitting there?" I peeked through the blinds. I couldn't see the driver's face, just a shape behind tinted windows. "Probably a neighbor," I said, but my gut told me that was a lie. The car stayed there for 20 minutes before finally pulling away. When I went outside later, I saw tire tracks in the frost-covered driveway and something tucked under the doormat. A small, folded note. No envelope. It said, "Don't call anyone, we'll handle this when we're back." M as in Mark, I read it twice. "We'll handle this." What did that even mean? It wasn't fear I felt, not anymore. It was rage, cold, precise, growing sharper with every breath. Because for the first time I realized they weren't embarrassed about leaving us. They were worried. And that meant there was something they didn't want anyone else to find out. Something big. 2 days later, I found out what they were hiding. It started when Jordan's stomach began hurting. He hadn't eaten much, just cereal and peanut butter sandwiches, but he was pale and sweating. I figured it was stress, or maybe the milk had gone bad. Still, I had no car, no money, and no working debit card. Mom had access to my account for emergencies, which apparently included stealing from it. I spent that morning trying to call her again. Straight to voicemail. Same with Mark. Then, around noon, a message came from Kaylee. The first one since they'd left. "Kaylee, I'm sorry about what happened. Mom didn't want it to be like this." Me, like what? "Kaylee, I shouldn't say anything. They'll kill me if they find out." That last part made me stop breathing for a second. Me, find out what? Kaylee, just promise you won't tell them I told you. I swore I wouldn't. Then her next message came through in pieces, like she was typing fast and scared. Kaylee, the trip wasn't just for vacation. Kaylee, Mom said it was about paperwork. Kaylee, they were signing something. Kaylee. Something that made you not part of the family anymore. I stared at the screen, reading it over and over. Not part of the family anymore. Me, what paperwork? Kaylee, adoption stuff. But like the opposite, I don't know the word. She said it's to make things easier legally if anything happens. Then she unsent 2 of the messages and went offline. I sat there for a long time, trying to process that. Adoption stuff. Except I wasn't adopted, I was Mom's biological daughter. But then it hit me what Kaylee must have meant. They were trying to remove me from something, maybe the will, maybe the family trust, maybe even the house title. And if that was true, it made sense why they wanted me gone. They needed me out of the country, unreachable, while they signed everything over. But the part that didn't make sense, why leave Jordan too, unless they'd meant to take him? That night, I checked my mom's Instagram again. She'd posted new pictures, Eiffel Tower, wine glasses, family dinner in Paris. In the corner of one photo, there was a glimpse of something that made my blood run cold. A boy, sitting at the table. Blonde hair, red sweater, Jordan's red sweater. But when I zoomed in, the face wasn't Jordan's. It was some other kid, smiling next to Mark like he'd always belonged there. And Mom had commented, "So proud of our beautiful family of 4. Not 5. 4. That's when I knew for sure they hadn't forgotten Jordan. They'd replaced him. And whoever that boy was, they were pretending he was their son. Jordan saw the photo, too. He didn't cry this time. He just said quietly, "That's my sweater." And something in me broke. I wasn't going to wait for them to come back anymore. They wanted to erase us? Fine. I'd make sure the whole world saw what they'd done. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a half-empty mug of coffee that had gone cold. And for the first time since Mom married Mark, every plan I'd ever had for my life felt like it belonged to someone else. They were trying to cut me out, financially, legally, socially, and I had to make a plan that was simple, unromantic, and impossible for them to ignore. First rule, document everything. If they wanted to rewrite our family, I would make a paper trail so obvious you couldn't miss it with a bulldozer. I dug through the house like someone hunting for a map to buried treasure. I found copies of tax returns in a desk drawer, a bank statement shoved under a stack of mail, and an envelope with a pre-approved line of credit in Mark's handwriting. I took photos of everyone, timestamped them with my phone. The camera app keeps metadata even if you scrub a file, and uploaded copies to an email draft I saved as a draft so nothing would delete it remotely. I don't have to be a lawyer to know that paper and timestamps are a kind of power. Second rule, make our absence visible. If they were using, "We'll handle this when we're back," as a threat, I needed the world to know Jordan and I were not missing because of some childish squabble. We were left. I made a list of everyone who would take this seriously. The school, Jordan's pediatrician, the local police non-emergency line, and the Child Protective Services hotline. I called them in that order. The school was closed for the holidays, but I left a voicemail so there was a record. The pediatrician's office said bring him in if he showed any symptoms, which gave me the excuse to get medical notes if we needed them. Child Protective Services took my report seriously once I told them an 11-year-old had been left alone, and they opened a case number. That one felt like a small, bright light in a dark room. Third rule, collect witnesses. We're not a family that gets much sympathy, but neighbors are people, and people notice cars, luggage, and silence. Mrs. Alvarez next door had seen the car leave early that morning and remembered a man carrying a passport-sized booklet that looked like a passport. She'd assumed it was nothing, but when I told her who was missing, she agreed to write a signed note saying what she'd seen. The mailman, who likes to gossip, had remembered packages left for the family and said he'd noticed Mark's SUV loaded with suitcases the night before. Little things that, when strung together, look like intent. Fourth rule, exploit the lie. They'd posted photos. I saved every single one of them, screenshots, original images, comments. Social media is a public square, and if they were pretending Jordan never existed to the world, I'd force them to confront the contradiction. I started combing through older posts, looking for the whiplash between our family of 5 and our perfect family of 4. It's surprising how fast people put their truth in pixels and forget they did it. If there were documents they intended to sign, there would be receipts, confirmation emails, appointment notifications, digital breadcrumbs. I plan to follow those crumbs. Fifth rule, financial leverage. This was the part that scared me the most, and the part I knew they were counting on. Money. They had access to accounts. They had managed trusts. They had Mark's polished business accounts that masked family finances. I didn't have access, but I had enough. A copy of a joint bank statement with signatures, pre-approved documents with dates, and an old power of attorney form my mom had joked about filling out for convenience. I took pictures of the checks and statements and saved screenshots of anything that hinted at transfers around the time of the trip. If they tried to move money while we were unreachable, I could notify banks, file fraud alerts, and put holds. It wouldn't be pretty, but men like Mark aren't used to their little stacks of cash being frozen. Sixth rule. Make it public, but carefully. I'm not the kind of person who posts our family drama for strangers to judge, but a private war requires a public trump card. I wrote a concise, angry but factual message. Passport missing, child left, family traveling to Paris, suspicious replacement child in photos, legal paperwork under suspicious circumstances. I drafted it as an email to a local reporter I knew covered the county courthouse and to 2 community groups that had previously exposed shady real estate deals. I didn't press send. Not yet. The plan was to assemble a dossier, a PDF of timestamps, witness statements, screenshots, and the CPS case number, and then give them one clear choice. Explain in writing why they left us and what paperwork they were signing, or face the consequences of a public, legal, and social unmasking. Finally, the hardest part, the moral edge. Revenge is a slippery thing. I wanted them to pay, but I didn't want to become them. So my plan had rules. No physical confrontation, no blackmail, no illegal hacking. Just the truth, amplified. People like Mark build castles of appearances. All I had to do was pry at the grout with evidence until the mortar crumbled. When I finished that night, Jordan was asleep on the couch with his head on my lap. I felt tired in a way that went beyond the body, bone-deep tired. But my anger had a focus now. It wasn't just about being left. It was about the way they'd quietly tried to erase us and profit from it. They thought a plane ticket and a staged photo could make their version of reality stick. They were wrong. I hit Save Draft on the dossier email and called my friend Melissa, who worked downtown at a legal aid clinic. I need to talk, I said, and I need a witness who knows how to read contracts. She promised to meet me the next morning. That was all I wanted, someone who could see the paperwork with clear eyes. They thought they'd go to Paris and sign things that would lock me out. They were about to discover what happens when the person you try to erase decides to become a lawyer of their own life. Melissa showed up the next morning with a legal pad, a thermos of coffee, and the kind of face you only get from working too many hours in a city legal aid clinic. Start from the top, she said. So I told her everything: Paris, the note, the passport, Kaylee's messages, the fake Jordan in the photos. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said, "Show me what you've got." I slid my phone across the table. She scrolled through screenshots, nodding occasionally until she hit the picture of the boy in the red sweater. "This one," she said quietly. "You sure that's not Jordan? Positive that's not his face." She zoomed in, eyes narrowing. "That's not just any kid, that's a stock model." "What?" She opened her laptop, typed for maybe 20 seconds, then spun it toward me. On the screen was the exact same photo, same boy, same sweater, same background, but it wasn't from Paris. It was a stock image used for family holiday advertisements. I felt my chest tighten. "You're saying they photoshopped him in?" Melissa nodded. "They're manufacturing a fake trip. These photos weren't taken in Paris. The lighting's all wrong. The metadata on this one says it was edited 2 days ago, and the geotag location is from Greensboro, not France." I sat there, staring at the screen. "So they're not even there?" "Nope," she said. "They're probably local. And if I had to guess, they're hiding out while they finish whatever paperwork this is." That realization hit harder than any of the previous shocks. They hadn't just abandoned us, they'd staged a fake trip to throw us off. "But why lie about being in Paris?" I asked. Melissa leaned back, thinking. "Because whatever they're doing, they don't want you anywhere near it. They need time to make it official, transfers, signings, something big. And if everyone thinks they're on vacation, nobody asks questions. She looked at me over the rim of her coffee cup. Do you have access to their email? I shook my head. Then we need to find someone who does. That's when Jordan came running down the stairs, holding something in his hand. This was on the printer, he said, breathless. It was a single sheet of paper, still warm from the printer tray. I had no idea when it had been printed, but it had a date, December 25, and a header that made my stomach drop. Petition for change of guardianship, minor. Jordan Langley, my brother's name, filed by Mark Langley and Marissa Langley, and under reason for petition, the typed words, to correct custody inconsistencies and finalize transfer to biological father. I looked up at Jordan, my voice barely working. Biological father, he frowned. But Mark isn't my dad, right? Melissa read over my shoulder, her face going pale. This isn't a mistake. They're trying to transfer custody. But that means... She didn't have to finish the sentence. It meant Mom had lied about something fundamental, something about who Jordan really was. That night, after Melissa left, I couldn't stop thinking about those words, biological father. I dug through the old storage bins in the garage where Mom kept documents, birth certificates, old report cards, the usual stuff. Around midnight, I found a folder labeled Medical 2014. Inside were copies of Jordan's hospital discharge papers. Only one parent was listed. Mother, Marissa Langley. Father, redacted, not blank, redacted, like someone had gone back later and blacked it out. But the real shock was behind that page, a court document dated years before, sealed but not fully stapled shut. It had a heading I'll never forget. Petition to establish paternity. Respondent David R. Collins. David Collins. That name meant nothing to me. But in small handwriting at the bottom, there was an address in Raleigh, the same city where Mark used to travel for work. It hit me all at once. Mark wasn't Jordan's biological father. But maybe, neither was the man listed on that petition. And the only reason Mom would need to change custody now, in secret, was if Jordan's real father was coming back for him. That's when I realized this wasn't just about inheritance. This was about ownership. And the man they were hiding from might not have been Mark's enemy, he might have been helping them. Jordan came downstairs later, rubbing his eyes. Did you find out who he is? He asked. I swallowed hard. Not yet. But I will. I didn't tell him the rest, that whoever David Collins was, he'd been erased from every record I could find. And people don't erase themselves from legal files unless they have something to hide. The next morning, I decided I wasn't waiting for them to come home. If they were still in North Carolina, pretending to be in Paris, I was going to find them. And when I did, I was going to make them tell me why they wanted to give my little brother away. It took 2 days and a borrowed car from Melissa before I found them. They weren't in Paris. They weren't even out of the state. They were 30 miles away in a lakefront rental house outside Greensboro, the kind of short-term Airbnb you book when you're hiding in plain sight. I spotted Mark's SUV parked out front, half covered with frost, and a rental sedan beside it. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I parked down the street. The whole neighborhood was quiet, off-season, empty vacation homes, just the sound of water lapping against docks. Jordan was with Melissa at her apartment. I told him I was just running an errand, but I'd left him a note just in case. I had to do this alone. When I walked up the driveway, I could see through the window. Mom, Mark, and some man in a gray suit sitting around the table with documents spread out. There was a bottle of wine, a laptop, and a stack of folders. I didn't knock. I opened the door. They all froze. Mom's face went white. What are you doing here? You forgot Jordan, I said. And you've been lying about where you are. You said Paris. But I guess Greensboro is close enough if you crop the photos. Mark stood, his smile tight and rehearsed. You need to leave. This doesn't concern you. That's where you're wrong, I said. I dropped the printed guardianship petition on the table. You're trying to hand over my brother to someone named David Collins. Maybe you should explain that to him. The man in the gray suit sighed, took off his glasses, and looked right at me. I'm David Collins, he said. Jordan's biological father. I stared at him. No, that's not possible. My mom said, she lied, he interrupted. About everything. Mom's voice cracked. Stop, she doesn't need to hear this. But I didn't move. I think I do. David leaned back, his tone calm in that expensive, practiced way men in suits talk when they think they own the room. Your mother and I had an affair, long before she married Mark. Jordan is mine. I've been trying to see him for years, but she and Mark made sure I couldn't. They filed restraining orders, moved cities, changed his school. Now that Jordan's older, I filed for custody. We agreed to settle quietly. That's what this meeting is for. Mom's eyes were wet, but not from guilt, from anger. He's twisting it. He's dangerous. I did what I had to do to protect us. I looked between them. So you left me, stole my passport, and faked an entire vacation just to what? Make it easier to sell him off. Her voice rose. You don't understand what he's capable of. David didn't flinch. She's lying again. I'm the one who paid for Jordan's medical bills, his early school tuition. I wired money for years. I have the receipts. He looked at Mark, then at me. They used my money to buy this house, to live this little dream. And now they're trying to make it disappear before it comes to light. Something cold started crawling up my spine. Wait, I said. You're saying they used your money? He nodded. Every dollar. I turned to Mark. So that's what this is about. You're not signing custody, you're signing silence. You're selling Jordan's rights back to him for cash. Mark slammed his hand on the table. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me, I said. Why did you fake being in Paris? Why not just say you were mediating this? He didn't answer. He just stared at Mom. She wouldn't look at me. And that was the real moment it all fell into place. They weren't protecting Jordan. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. Because the money they'd used, the down payments, the accounts in Mark's name, all of it came from David Collins. And if anyone found out, they'd lose everything. The house, the savings, their reputation. That's why they needed us gone. Me, because I was the one who would ask questions. Jordan, because his name was proof of everything. They hadn't left me because I was too negative. They'd left me because I was too aware. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. We were going to fix it, we just needed time. By pretending to be in France, I asked. She wiped her face, but her eyes had gone cold now. You wouldn't understand. You've always made things harder. You always ruin everything with your attitude. And there it was, the real reason under all the legal lies. Not guilt, not protection, control. I wasn't the child she could manipulate anymore. So she tried to erase me the only way she knew how, make me the problem, then remove me from the picture. I felt something in me snap, not from hate, but from clarity. I looked her dead in the eye and said, You don't get to decide who disappears anymore. Then I pulled my phone out and hit record. They didn't even realize until I'd already captured 5 minutes of audio. The admission, the lies, the deal, all of it. That was the moment the power shifted. For the first time in years, she looked afraid of me. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just kept my phone recording while they realized what I'd done. Mark was the first to move. He lunged toward me, but I stepped back fast and said, Try it. The cops already have the file. I hadn't actually sent it yet, but he didn't need to know that. Mom whispered, You wouldn't do that to your own family. I almost laughed. You stopped being that when you left an 11-year-old home alone on Christmas. David stood there silent, watching, probably calculating what this meant for him. He was part of this, but he wasn't my target, not yet. The people who had tried to erase us were standing right there. I hit send on the draft email I'd prepared. Within seconds, the message went to Melissa, CPS, the police contact, and the reporter I'd spoken to earlier that morning. It included everything: the recordings, the screenshots, the custody papers, and the Happy Holidays note. Then I left. I didn't look back when Mom shouted my name. The fallout started fast. By the next afternoon, a CPS investigator was at the house. They interviewed me, then Jordan. Melissa acted as my legal advocate. Within 24 hours, the agency had temporary protective custody orders for Jordan, and a restraining order filed against both Mark and Mom for abandonment and attempted custodial interference. 2 days after that, the police called. They'd executed a welfare check at the Greensboro property. Mark was arrested for fraud and obstruction after it turned out he'd been funneling money through accounts under Jordan's name. David Collins was questioned, too. Apparently, his settlement with Mom and Mark had been part of a larger pattern of financial blackmail. The vacation photos, traced back to a fake digital marketing company Mark had used to stage alibis for tax reasons. The entire thing unraveled like wet paper. Mom tried calling me over and over again from an unknown number. I never answered. But she left one voicemail. Her voice was shaky, desperate. "You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Yeah, I did. I'd made sure she couldn't hide behind fake smiles and filtered posts anymore. I'd made sure she would never be able to decide who counted as family again. CPS placed Jordan with me temporarily while the investigation continued. Melissa helped me file for full custody through emergency guardianship, and because I was an adult, blood relative, and the one who reported the abandonment, the court granted it pending a full hearing. It wasn't easy. We lived on cheap takeout and borrowed furniture for a while, and I took every extra shift I could get. Jordan started therapy. He didn't talk about Mom much, but when he did, it was short things like, "Do you think she ever actually loved us?" I didn't lie. I just said, "She loved herself more." It took 6 months for the trial to wrap up. Mark pled guilty to fraud. Mom avoided prison, but she lost custody permanently and was ordered to pay restitution to David Collins for the stolen funds, money she didn't have. Last I heard, she moved to Florida under her maiden name. David tried reaching out once, sending a letter offering support. I sent it back unopened, because none of them had earned the right to be in Jordan's life anymore. On Christmas morning this year, Jordan and I sat in our tiny apartment in Charlotte. The tree was half decorated, our dinner was ramen with eggs, and the heater rattled like it might quit any second. But he was smiling. When I looked over, he handed me a folded note he'd written himself. It said, "Happy holidays, thanks for not leaving." I laughed, the kind that hurts your throat, and said, "Guess we finally got our own family tradition." He grinned. "Yeah, one where we don't fake Paris trips." For the first time, I didn't feel angry anymore. Just done. Mom used to say I was too negative for family vacations. Maybe she was right, I just wasn't negative enough to believe her lies. Now when people ask about family, I tell them the truth. We started over because the old one burned itself down. And honestly, it's quieter this way.